Hey everyone, I am thrilled to have Nick Mehta with me from Gainsight. Nick is the CEO over there, and I'm a real big fan of Gainsight. It's kind of the de facto leader in customer success. And customer success is such an important piece of the pie right now, what everyone is dealing with. Keeping your customers close and avoiding churn and creating loyalty. So I'm really excited to have Nick with me today. Nick, if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about yourself, what kind of brought you to Gainsight, and then we'll kind of just go from there.
Yeah, Joe, it's great to meet you. I can give you the background. It can be the 5-hour version or I'll do the 2-minute version probably.
We'll do the accordion. Yeah, 2 hours, 2 minutes.
So quick version is kind of, I've been around tech my whole life. Grew up in Pittsburgh, which you can it's a little bit obvious from what you see here. And my dad was a tech entrepreneur and never did anything big, but just some kind of small companies. So I grew up around computers and all that stuff and always wanted to go into tech. I started a company in college, which was an internet company back in the first .com, long time ago, before many listeners were even working or perhaps born. And that one was kind of a boom and bust. It was actually doing really well. And then unfortunately with the .com ended up shutting down. But then I worked in enterprise software and, enterprise software prior to the cloud, the model was you sell a customer, they pay you upfront for the software, and often that's a lot of money. And then they might pay you a small amount for support later on, but you got most of that money up front. And so in that model, the core thing in those companies was building products and selling those products, right? And then once you sold the product, you wanted to support the customer, but it wasn't kind of the center of the company. It was just something that you did, kind of more of a cost center. And then I got hired to run my first SaaS business in 2008. There's a company called Live Office. It was a software as a service for storing customers' emails and documents for legal purposes, kind of a niche esoteric area, but a good business, and we grew it. But our customers didn't pay us all up front. They paid us as they went. They could leave at any time, just like we all know now. And in running that company, I realized that as the CEO, I spent way more of my time not on building the product or selling it, but on our existing customers and with our customer success team. We called them a client services team back then because we didn't have all this fancy lingo that we do now. But I saw that and I was like, wow, this is like total change in the way you run a company. And I also saw that we had great technology at my last company for marketing. We had great technology for sales. We had great technology for billing and product development. And we had nothing to manage our customers. So kind of put two and two together. I sold my last company to Symantec in 2011. I was taking some time off. I was an entrepreneur in residence at Excel Venture Partners. And EIR is one of those cushy Silicon Valley jobs that you get to do for a while where you get to pontificate what you want to do next. And I didn't come up with the idea for Gainsight. There's two founders who had the idea and they had basically had the same experience I had. They'd been a SaaS company. They saw the way things change. And then I met them through our investors and we decided to partner up and launch the company in 2013. And we launched in our Series A with Battery Ventures in 2013. And now it's been about 7.5 years and still a long way to go, but it's been fun.
That's really great. I mean, I feel like you just brought up a whole bunch of avenues that I can go down from. I had some time in Pittsburgh when I was at Adobe. We worked with CMU. On some projects, and I went out there, and there's a pretty cool little tech scene popping up, which is great.
Yeah, it's growing a lot actually. As my mom tells me all the time, because she's trying to convince me to move back to Pittsburgh, even though it's 20 years in California, and she says there's tech companies here, you can move back.
Yeah, as you know, that's a long drive from the airport to the city, and it was cool to talk to the Uber driver and just kind of like hear, the history of. He knew really well the history of like moving from, steel to tech, and it was pretty cool.
That's awesome.
And obviously all those schools are, right in downtown Pittsburgh are really great.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you brought up a few different things about customer success and, how enterprise software and how we've kind of moved to these SaaS models, which I was definitely firsthand part of at Adobe. What do you feel like, why customer success is so important? It's definitely had different names over the years, but we're kind of going in with customer success at the moment. When did it kind of start to explode as the current title that it is, and why is it so important?
Yeah, it's interesting because so just take you through the history a little bit. first of all, Gainsight did not start the concept of customer success by no means. It was really started out of necessity by the early cloud vendors. And there's some dispute about which ones did it first. We think it was Salesforce, but you could argue there's a few other companies in that same era. But all those companies basically had the same realization, which was they'd all come from the older model I was telling you about, where you sell software up front and people pay you. And then they launched these cloud businesses. And frankly, they didn't change anything about the way they ran the business. They just put the software in the cloud. But what they realized was, whoa, if customers pay us on a yearly basis or month to month, and they pay us based on the number of seats they're using, the reality is if they're not using it, they're not going to stay with us, right? Unlike the old model where even if you bought software and you never deployed it, you kind of still stuck with it. And so that was a big wake-up call. So companies like Salesforce and others in the sort of 2004, 2005 timeframe created the first customer success teams. And there's a handful of them early on, companies like Box and Salesforce and Workday and the really early kind of cloud pioneers. And then what ended up happening is when we launched Gainsight in 2013, we kind of looked at the landscape. We said, hey, we think there's an opportunity here. And then we looked on LinkedIn and said, how many customer success people are there in the world? And there was like 500 in the whole world. People, not companies, right? And so I was like, that's hard to build a business around. 500 potential users.
Yeah.
And so we said, well, our job is not to market Gainsight. Our job is to market customer success and explain to people why it's critical in this new business model. And so we spent a lot of our time, still do today, talking to CEOs, talking to boards, talking to investors, talking to teams about why customer success is existential. And as you probably know, that showed up in things like a conference that we do every year, that like the first year in 2013, we did it, 300 people showed up. The last year when we did it in person for the most recent time, 5,000 people showed up. This year we did it virtual, 23,000 people. Customer success management now is the sixth most promising job on LinkedIn across all jobs. Oh, wow. So it's become a real job, and there's not just 500 people anymore. There's well over 100,000 people in the CS world, and it's growing super fast. And so that's evolved a lot. But the other thing that's evolved is CEOs realizing that this is not just a tactical thing you need to go do. It's not just you go hire somebody and, hey, you do customer success, we'll keep doing all our old job. It's actually kind of almost a way to reinvent the company around the customer, which we can talk more about.
Yeah, it is really interesting that, like one of the first like 5 hires we made here in the cloud app after we raised some money last spring was a customer success person. So exactly. It was like head of sales, like AE, customer success, because we had enough accounts that it made sense, to have someone. And yeah, it's like exactly like what you said. It's a crucial piece of, a starting company.
Yeah. And if you really look at it in a broader sense, it's just a crucial part of the disruption playbook. So you think about the disruption playbook, like how is all this innovation happening, right? And there's just a few things that companies are doing differently, right? And the companies that are doing those things differently are succeeding amazingly well. One of them is being extremely product oriented and building great products that have sort of great experiences from the beginning, right? Another one is rethinking your go-to-market to have it be more low friction and more free trial and more freemium, just like you all do, right? Another one is having a culture that's all about transparency and values and openness, right? That's another part of the playbook. And a fourth one is having the customer experience and customer success be central to the whole company. And so those things, honestly, as you can attest, are just now second nature if you're starting a company. You would not start a company that wasn't transparent, that wasn't customer centric, that wasn't product centric. It's just not even possible. You wouldn't get funded. It wouldn't happen. And so what's happening is all of the bigger companies are having to wake up and say, we need to adopt those practices. You were at Adobe, the poster child of actually making that transition, where they are now transparent, customer centric, very product centric, change their go-to-market, and check out the stock price if you want any evidence of the value. Right? And every other company now is having to do the same thing. They're trying to adopt those playbooks that the younger companies like Cloud App are doing kind of by second nature.
So what's the DNA of a good customer experience? And take me inside Gainsight HQ in March.
Yeah.
What were you, Nick, CEO, doing with your, head of sales or, wherever success lives, and saying, hey, these are, things that we need to immediately do to our customers during this, chaotic time?
Totally. I'll answer the first one and kind of more generally, and then the second one.
Yep.
So I think broadly, an anatomy of a good customer success strategy has kind of three core elements to it. Number one is you do need a team that's actually focused day in, day out, waking up and thinking about customer success, right? People build those. We can talk about the charter of that team and how you compensate them and what their roles are, but you need a team. It's just like sales. You can't just say, hey, everyone's in sales. You need salespeople, right? But then you need this kind of cross-company strategy that says we're going to make customer success and customer experience part of the end-to-end process, from the way we develop the product, the way we sell, to the way we market, to the way we actually service the customer. And then you need a kind of a culture that supports customer centricity. So those are the three core ingredients: a team, a company-wide strategy, and a culture. And so if you look at those, let's say in the micro lens of COVID-19 in the beginning of March, so what was happening? Well, first of all, for our customer success team, obviously this was kind of prime time for every CS team in the world, right? Your job is to protect your customers, make sure they're successful.
Yep.
Right now, their customer, you needed to go like 10x on that, right? Because a few things were happening. Number one, every customer was thinking, "Hey, do I really need this vendor or not?" I'm sure you saw this. Everyone saw like, "Hey,
yep. CFO's desk, right? Big spreadsheet.
Spreadsheet, exactly. We had the one. Everyone had one. What do we need? What can we cut? Yep. Second thing is, even if they weren't cutting the vendor, they might have been cutting the amount of licenses or the amount of usage or whatever, right? Third is the customers also needed help, right? They also needed help to maybe like re-implement, or maybe some customers needed to move faster because their business was actually exploding because they're in ed tech or something, right? And so for those reasons, customer success became even more important during the downturn. So what did CS teams do like at Gainsight? What do we do? Well, number one is we operationalize this playbook to reach out to our customers and just be able to kind of categorize them and understand the impact of COVID. Because we all know that some businesses have exploded because of COVID in a positive way, and some have exploded, unfortunately, in a negative way, right? In both ways, and some are in the middle. And so we kind of had this very orchestrated process of reaching out to customers using our Gainsight software and categorizing them. We actually ended up taking those playbooks that we did and we put them online into our product so other customers could do the exact same thing. And one of the other tactical things we had to do is understand what's the financial situation of this customer. Do they need a relief of payments, maybe deferring the payments for a few months? I'm sure you dealt with that too.
Yep.
And so we kind of orchestrated all that. We could see out of all of our ARR, how much is impacted positively, how much is impacted negatively, how much is the amount that's going to be asked for payment relief, et cetera. And so kind of that triage process was the first thing. The second thing then was kind of getting ahead of the renewals that were coming up, right? So normally you might work 90 days out, 120 days out.
Sure.
How do you get 180 days out? And start a process. So we use some of our automation technology plus our great CS team to basically have those conversations about, how are you thinking about renewal? Renewal's not till December, but how are you thinking about it, right? And so get alignment on what that means. What is it going to take to get to renewal done? Third is really focus on adoption. So we used a combination of some of our automated kind of email technology, as well as our in-app technology that kind of drives basically usage in the application to get people to use more of the functionality, more of the seats. Because the biggest challenge most vendors are facing now is not people leaving altogether. It's them saying, I don't need to spend as much money with company A, B, or C because I'm only using half the seats I bought. I'm using half the functionality, right? So triage our customers, get those confirmatory renewal conversations, drive up usage and adoption. Those are the three things we focused on.
That's really great. I think those are all so important. And I always love hearing the Gainsight on Gainsight.
Yeah, right. It's interesting.
And kind of see inside the company that you're specializing in it and what you're kind of doing.
It's like the movie, if you like the Christopher Nolan movie Inception, where it's a dream within a dream. That's basically what we live all the time. We actually, fun fact is we call our internal instance of Gainsight Gainsight on Gainsight. So that's Gong, G-O-N-G. And even more fun trivia, one of our customers is the company Gong, which is a call recording software company that we love and we use. And so we sometimes are in our own instance of Gong, looking at the customer Gong. So it gets a little bit confusing sometimes.
That's awesome. Yeah, it was always customer zero was it Adobe. But I like Gong. Gong is a great acronym.
Yep.
How can, obviously we're talking over video conferencing kind of software. Zoom calls have gone through the roof. Obviously, Blue Jeans was bought by Verizon. those are kind of covering your real-time feed. How can kind of like async tools like Cloud App help to connect with your customers and also internally and kind of make sure that that connection is still there when we can't be together?
Yeah, I mean, you know it, and hopefully are benefiting massively from it, which is this sort of like digital transformation of the customer engagement process, where you're not able to meet anymore. I think that is. I think it's not just a temporary thing. First of all, we'll talk more about that. But I think right now it's become so important, and I would argue it's not just important because of COVID-19. What's happened is that buying processes have become more decentralized, and there's a lot of people that you need to talk to in a company. And a lot of those people don't want to get on a call with you, right? They don't want to get on an hour-long demo for the 2 minutes that are relevant to them, right? Which is literally what often happens. And they also don't want to spend like half the time doing the intros for the call and seeing your PowerPoint slides or Google Slides or whatever. They want to see that one feature. And so I think even pre-COVID, I'm sure you're seeing this a big way. There's just this move to like show me versus tell me. And video is an awesome way to do that. And doing these snippet videos, I'm a massive fan of these like short videos like your company enables. And so that to me, that's like pre-COVID. And then you have with COVID, it's like, well, I really need an ability to reach people. And by the way, they're also kind of tired of doing so many Zoom's great, I love the technology, but it's just no matter what technology, no matter how good it is, it gets tiring to do this synchronous video. But being able to quickly kind of consume content. We personally in our company, as well as I think for our customers, are engaging more and more on that. And then I think that's not just true pre-sale, but increasingly post-sale in my world, where if you're a customer success person, you want to get that client to engage, you can say, hey, can we get on a 45-minute call? Or you could say, hey, here's a 2-minute video I just made of like how in your own instance, you can set this up and use this particular feature, right? And I think that idea of very, very personalized, short kind of content, asynchronous, is the future of how people are going to sell.
It's interesting. Like, so we kind of just started our sales team last summer, hired a head of sales and kind of started bringing people on. So there was, a little bit of a ramp last Q3, Q4 last year. And in Q4, we started using Cloud App ourselves in the sales process. And the conversion rate was 10x.
That's
with
awesome.
A short line and a video, not like, I'm sure you're getting blasted, your whole team's getting blasted, like, hope you're safe and sound.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever, right? Like with this massively long email that just, I don't want to read.
I send videos in some of my emails to executives because I'm like, I want to save you time. Like, this is what I'm going to show you, and I do think it makes a difference. The other thing is, as you all know well, and it's, I'm sure, driving a lot of the foundations of your thinking, I do think as business people, our main mindset is evolved by who we are as human beings, and our kind of human connection is evolving more and more to video. And like, I will say that we've been infected by TikTok at home as an example, as I'm sure everyone has. And I love it myself too. I got to admit, guilty pleasure. And my wife and my kids. And like, when you start seeing people consuming short form video content, originally YouTube, now things like TikTok, you can see that is the future. That's how people want to consume. And I definitely believe in kind of what you're doing.
Awesome. I want to spend the last little bit of our conversation. This has been great chat, first of all. Talking about your book. I just got it myself. I'm excited to kind of dig in, learn more. Yeah, you've got one behind you there.
Right here.
Nice. The customer success economy. So it's out, and I want to kind of talk about, first of all, your inspiration to kind of put some pen to paper and get something out and kind of unload your brain. And then let's go into kind of some key insights. I'm sure you've already touched on a few along the way, but what can we learn from that?
Totally. Yeah. So the inspiration, first of all, if you're running a company and thinking about at some point doing a book, always happy to chat about it. It's been amazing for us. So we've done 3 books. So we did a book in 2015 called Customer Success, which become kind of like the authoritative like intro guide to CS. And, actually it's sold like 70,000 copies, been translated in crazily enough into like Mandarin, Portuguese, Spanish, Japanese. It's really nuts.
Awesome.
And that was just like, if you can believe it, literally in 2014, we got a cold email from our publisher, Wiley. And they're like, do you want to write a book? And we were like, Dan Steinman, who did a lot of the writing, and I helped, who's one of my executives. We were both like, why do they want us to write a book? Is this a scam? Is this like one of those things where you put in money and like they take it? Is this one of those wire transfers to like, some other country? But then we get on the phone and they're like, yeah, we actually really want you to write a book. So we're like, okay, we'll do a book. And it turned out customer success was a hot topic that was getting a lot of executive attention. And so that first book, I kid you not, it's been one of the biggest things we've ever done in our company's history. Awesome. Executive teams made it mandatory reading. Some companies made like everyone in the company has to read it. So it's really driven our sales cycles, our customer engagement, everything, the movement, people getting into the career. And then basically we said, okay, let's do some more books. So we actually did a second and a third. The second book was called Customer Success Professional Handbook. And that's really for like a day-to-day CSM that wants like really tactical advice about like executive business reviews and writing emails and things like that. And then we wrote this third book, Customer Success Economy, because what it ended up happening is our thinking on the space evolved a lot from, when we wrote the first book in 2015 to now. Things have changed a lot. And we said, okay, let's write a new book. Allison Pickens, who was my COO at the time, she just stepped down, but she's been with us a long time. And she and I wrote this together. And we basically said, let's take all of the conversations we've had and turn them into a book. Because, I mean, you probably know, Joe, like I love talking to customers. I probably have maybe 1,000 per year of customer prospect conversations, CEOs, executives. Let's take all that, put into a book, and basically cover three themes. So the three things we cover in the book. Number one, let's take the kind of random experimentation that was done in CS early on, which is what naturally happens, around things like, do you give people quota or not? Do they report into sales or be a separate org? Things like that. Let's put that into standard kind of a decision tree of how you make the decisions on those things. There's not one answer, but there's kind of a framework for making decisions. That's number one. Sure. Number two, we called it Customer Success Economy because we show that customer success isn't just for tech companies anymore. We interview companies across lots of different industries, from healthcare to manufacturing to financial services, telco, and talk about how this is going in lots of different places. And then number three, we talk about how it's not just a function anymore. It's not just a CSM team. It's a company-wide mindset. And it changes the way you build products, the way you sell them, the way you market them. And we have a chapter on each department and how that changes in the world of CS. And so that's why we wrote it. And yeah, it's gotten some pretty good reception so far.
It's really cool. What are some of the kind of key insights from the book that you would want to dig a little deeper on? You kind of did the broad overview. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about some of the keys to setting up the framework for setting up a CS team.
Yeah, totally. So I think that in creating a CS team, if you're creating one for the first time, one of the big things is like, what is that CSM going to do? And I know that sounds pretty trite, but customer success is too broad.
Yep.
That's just too it's a great umbrella, but it's too broad, right? And I've talked to a lot of clients of CSMs, meaning like, for example, CIOs and people that buy software. And they've said, hey, the CSM needs to have like a real value add. Sometimes CSMs can end up being the nice person that helps route my email to the person that can really help me, which is not a very efficient or effective situation for anyone involved, including the CSM. So I kind of, one best practice is I define that there's kind of 4-ish paradigms for being a great CSM. And you don't need to do all 4, but you have to have at least one of these 4. So either you know the product inside and out, and you're going to help the customer get from their idea of what they're looking for to value, right? Not just supporting them, but actually helping them figure out how to do what they want with the product, right? Really understand. Number 2, sometimes the CSM has walked in the shoes of the customer, meaning you sell HR software and they used to be an HR practitioner so they can empathize with the customer and connect with them. Number 3, sometimes the CSM is a great consultant where they can go into a big company, understand the whole landscape, understand their processes, figure out how to fit in the software into their world. That works really well in enterprise type customers. And then number 4, sometimes the CSM is a great kind of almost like an account manager, salesperson, but with a little bit more of a value empathy kind of side as well. And so they can kind of drive commercial and the adoption as well. So one of those 4, but if you don't fit any of those 4, if you're not, a product knowledgeable and you're not a consultative and you're not in the domain of the customer and you can't do the renewal and expansion, as to quote Office Space, which one of my favorite movies of all time, what would you say you do?
What do you say you do here? Yeah.
And so like that idea that like you have to have some value add. That's kind of one big thing. And then you can define your comp model based on that value add. Are they a product person that's trying to drive adoption? Are they a consultative person that's trying to drive like executive alignment? Really understanding the role, and then kind of what's the way to measure that role, basically.
That's really great. I mean, this conversation has been, chock full of great insights and tidbits. Really appreciate your time today, Nick. I always like to kind of have you look into a crystal ball at the end and make your bold predictions on experience business, customer success. What does the future look like?
All right, let me find it. I think the crystal ball might have missed
the office, probably, right?
So I love, I'm sure like you and a lot of people, I kind of, read every single Jeff Bezos thing. And it's like such amazing wisdom about business. Right. And, and so he has this like famous quote about like, don't just think about the things that will change radically over the next 10 years. Think about the things that won't change, or will just keep going on the trend that they're on now. And I'd argue there's two things that are almost indisputable that will happen over the next 10 years, 5 years, whatever you want. Number one, customers will get more power in every business model. So they've gotten more power over the last 5-10 years because they have more choices. They can try things out. They can leave. They'll get more power even than they have now.
Yep.
Number two, vendors will have more data about their customers than ever. They'll have more information about their customers to be more proactive with them. So there is no doubt that given those two things, customer success will become more and more important, because it's just essentially the union of two things. It's using data to be more proactive with your customers because they have more power. That's what customer success is, right? And what that means is, if you look at a pie of all of the stuff in a company, and each wedge is like sales or marketing or product, right? Right now, the wedge size for CS might be maybe the smallest slice for some companies. That's just going to get bigger. And at some point, maybe 5 years from now, it'll be as big as sales, because more and more of the kind of actual life cycle of a customer will happen after the sale. You think about a free trial model. You think about a consumption-based model like an Amazon or Google. Like the sale doesn't mean anything. It's about actually getting the customer to use it. With AWS, I can sign up for an account and they sold me, but until I turn on my EC2 instance, like they're not making any money, right?
Yeah.
So we believe, and I believe firmly, that it's just pure kind of physics that the world is going to get more focused on customer success in the next 5 years.
Yeah, you can definitely see a future similar to like where we're in now, where CIO and the CTO kind of like own a lot of the purchasing power.
Yeah.
Where customer success, like you said, grows and becomes equal, if not more powerful than sales.
Totally. Yeah. That's what I think will happen. And then I think what will happen is we'll reinvent sales, because sales is also important, and you'll kind of reinvent it for this new world as well.
Awesome. Nick, I really appreciate your time today. Definitely hope that we all get an NFL season this fall.
Here.
And great talking to you.
Thanks, Joe.